I swore an oath before God that I would never do this. And here I am. Ninth grade, they have a speech class. And I never gave a speech. How do you get through a speech class and never give a speech? But I didn't. I managed to avoid it because it was terrifying. They say that giving speeches is the most terrifying thing for most people. Well, today has been surreal because there's been no terror. I woke up at 2, and it wasn't out of terror. It was manic. You know what manic is? Oh, yeah, I was having fun. But what came up for me, just bear with me, honey. It's an interesting dynamic between us. I'm the kind of person that, and this is just temperaments, personality. One thing we've learned in 49 years is that the differences between us are sometimes hard, but you just accept each other for it and then get out of the judgment, get off yourself. So for me, planning, writing a speech out, the whole preparation of it, high anxiety. I don't want anything to do with planning. Just let me jump into it, feet first, and I only need to know where I'm putting my foot. I don't need to know what's over there. And she's the opposite. She wants to know where we're going, gives her security. And so this whole week, I'm sitting here, I don't want to plan for this. I just want to do this, but she needs a plan. And so being the self-sacrificial man that I am, we planned. But here we are, and it's probably not going to go according to plan. So what came up for me this morning was, I'm going to do this, so just let me do it. Okay. No, she doesn't know any of this. Okay. Yeah. I needed to know what it felt like to be a dead man on stage. 25 years ago or so, I was a walking dead man and didn't know it. I was getting through life. God was there somewhere, but he didn't talk to me. And I was okay with it. It had been like 30 years at that time of him not talking to me. And he was probably talking to me all along, but I wasn't listening. And he broke into my life. And the words that brought me to life were Tom lives. Tom lives. So if you want to get me up back in that chair, you all got to shout it for me. All right! Yeah. No, I can't get up.
Oh, no, you can't get up. Okay, we're at that stage.
Tom lives.
Oh. Tom lives.
I didn't know you were going to do that.
I know. I didn't know I was going to do that.
And I'm at the stage, we've been married 49 years, coming up in May. And I am now finally getting to the point in my life where I am getting free to just let my husband be who my husband is. Because things like that, I don't know what he's going to do. But I just honor him right now for the man that he is. And we're going to be sharing our story. And part of my story, we're not getting to this part yet, but part of my story is how I came out of darkness into his marvelous light. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit of that with you in a little bit. Oh, I have this. I get to keep it. But it's going to be hard to, talk. We'll see. You might have to hold it at times. Not yet. Okay.
I've got one.
Oh, okay. Oh, hold it for me.
Hold it. Okay, I got it, yeah. So you can use your hands. She's Italian. Right. She's going to cue me. She knows where we're going, and I don't. You could play that video now. We've got something. This will be fun. How many of you guys can relate? Oh, you girls too? Or you raising your hand for him? I get it. Yeah. Well, I relate to that. That's certainly like me. But there's a lot in that. The difference between Greg and I, men and women. Men are brain damaged. It's not a joke. The testosterone that's released to us when we go through whatever stage that is, but it destroys your brain. It changes the connections in your brain, and women don't have that. So their minds are multitasking, going 1,000,000 miles an hour everywhere, and I can just sit there with my dead brain and check out. And that shows up. And we've had to learn what it is about for her to see that I'm not seeing what she's seeing and not judge me for it. And then the other way around of, why can't you just slow down? So the early years of marriage was a lot of that. So you want to put up that first slide? No one has greater love than this, that one lays down his life for his friends. Marriage is a crucible. We all have crucibles even when we're not married, but marriage is a crucible that you can't escape if you keep your promises. You can go to that next screen. Promises, commitments. What oaths have you taken in life? What vows? What promises? My first experience at a oath was there in the Navy. I had no idea what I was saying when I said that oath. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. All the gobbledygook that they made you say, and it was just words that I was repeating. But in that ensuing 6 years, I learned what that oath meant because I could not escape it. It was the contract that I could not escape, even though there was plenty of times where I wanted to escape it. So marriage can be like that. Something you want to escape at times. Both of us were married. I was married during that time in the Navy before I got to the USS, that's the USS Pintado, fast attack nuclear submarine. I was a knuckle dragger, a machinist mate nuke on board there. Called them knuckle draggers, mechanic. The things that God taught me in that time about commitment that I didn't want to learn, but I had no choice, to this day have made me a lot of who I am as far as keeping commitments. And I didn't have words to put to him until years later, what that meant. But both of us were married in that same time frame. I was married while I was in the Navy. Brianna's mother had no clue what I was doing. The vows that we took there, they were just words that I repeated after the priest, in one ear, out the mouth, bypassing this completely. Meant nothing. But I still paid a price because I took those vows. And Brianna's paid a price because I took those vows. Now, I would not change that for anything because I've got grandsons. I've got great-granddaughter. She was here worshiping for a little while. I'm a great-grandfather. Amazing. Yeah. But Brianna has paid a price for my not knowing what I was saying. It wasn't just me paying the price. In a lot of ways, she's paid a bigger price than me. So don't take your vows lightly. Know what you're vowing to. But the reality is, you're not going to know. That's the strange conundrum. I love that word, conundrum. Somebody can look it up if you don't know what it means and yell out what it means. I'm kind of a wordsmith. I like words. It's a conundrum because you think you know what you're making the vow about, but you don't really until you experience it. And then you're called to it and have to live to it because you made the vow. You might have made up that you knew what it meant, but you don't really know until you get to it. So the learning curve of keeping your vows is, this is not on the right screen, but oh well. I don't need it anyway. That threw me off track. So that picture there of Greg and I in our wedding, yours, mine, and ours, she was pregnant. That was the time frame where I had come to a crossroads, one of my Bethels, wrestling with God. Not the only one I've had, but the first major one where I surrendered and said, okay, God, you have your way. I met Greg. She was in a New Age cult. Do you want to share some of that?
This is before we intersect, because I have a story. I want to share a little bit about my background. And when I was born in 1950 to two parents that were artists, and I was one of 4 children, second daughter, and I'm not really quite sure how I got my name, but I do have an unusual name. My mom was an artist, decided she wanted to name me something very unusual. But anyway, that's not so much the point, but there was not really much structure in my home, and so in many ways I felt like I was kind of alone and abandoned. My father was an alcoholic, an artist, working for an ad agency in New York City. And my mother was an artist as well, but she was sort of a frustrated artist because in her time, there was not a lot of opportunity for many things for women to do. So she, went down the road of, I think she ended up getting pregnant and marrying my father when she was only like 17 or 18 and had me when she was probably 20 years old. And so she was kind of always frustrated with her life. And she had said at one time later in her life she probably never should have had children. And she didn't say that in a way to, hurt me or my siblings, but to say that she didn't have what it took for her to be a mother that was, like a mother that's cuddly and warm and inviting and reading stories. So I didn't grow up with that. And my father was absent. He was an alcoholic, but he worked and was more of a party person with his art friends and, sort of seeking to escape with other women. So that was just a lot of us have a similar type story. But what that produced in me at that time was just a sense of no direction. Nobody's really there for me. I went through school feeling like, who am I? I don't know what I'm about or who I am as even a little child. And got into high school, and by the time I got to high school, some of you know some of my stories. It was so that I would get into school fights, and I was suspended, and Micah knows my story about my brass knuckles. I have some really crazy stories, and it's probably hard to believe me sitting up here telling you this. But, so I just had no support from my family. I decided to quit school when I was in 11th grade, and I remember going home and telling my mother, and my mother was just like, oh, well, there was no alarm. It was just like, where do we go from here? So there was no one in my life that I felt like was really supporting me or mentoring me or there for me in my life. So I finally, I was dating a man in high school. He was a couple years older than me. And we got into partying and all that kind of stuff. It's not important really. But I had no direction. And so I started to make my own, decided I have to make my own direction. So I quit school and I said, what I need is a family. I need to get married. So that's what I did. I got married when I was 17 years old to my boyfriend, and we started a life together, and we really didn't know what we were doing. And every time I would make these kind of decisions, I would make this commitment to myself. I'm going to have to make my own life. So when I married him, I thought, well, this is going to be the answer. This is the thing that's going to really fill me, fill my life, fill this hole that I feel inside. When that didn't do it, then a couple years later, I had my first daughter, Sarah. And I thought, well, I loved her, and I just embraced the whole motherhood. But there was still this empty hole inside of me. I couldn't figure out why I still feel this emptiness. So when my daughter was around 6 weeks old, I was invited to a home meeting by a friend. And it was a woman, and she started talking about, it was a small gathering of, I was like 19 at the time, so a lot of 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and we were all sit around and listen to this woman talk about God and love. This was in 1969, so it was still part of that hippie-ish time of life where people were, there was a wave of the Jesus movement, but there was also a wave of a bunch of New Age stuff going on at the same time. And that's what I was drawn into. At that time, I didn't know what that was, because I'd never heard the gospel. We never had a Bible in my house. We never went to church. We never had any guidance like that. So to me, I've been just hearing this person teaching about her idea of God and life, and I got pulled into this whole thing. So that was going on in my life for about 5 years. And what started off feeling really wonderful ended up becoming the most controlling experience I've ever had in my life. And it was very disruptive and I gave everything I had to. I gave up everything I owned. I was married at the time. My marriage started falling apart because it had nothing to do with marriage. It had to do with following a cult leader. So, and it became work. So here's the whole setting. So what happened, this is what started to shake that whole thing and disrupt the whole thing. We lived in these homes that this woman would buy, and then we'd all work in these homes and fix them up, but then we'd have to pay rent to live in them. Then I'd have to work at night. Then during the day, go to this other home where we were doing what we call the home bake shop. We'd bake baked goods. We'd go out selling baked goods to give the money back to the woman. That was, this whole cycle of this. Well, one evening I was at work at night in a restaurant working, and I got off my shift as a waitress, and I was coming home, and I was so tired. As I was driving home, I closed my eyes for a second. All of a sudden, I had driven up onto someone's front lawn. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to get home. So I got back to my house, but I still knew that I had to leave that night and drive down to the main center where we had this bake shop so that I could bake. I was under so much pressure in my life to perform and do and work. Well, packed a bag. I knew I shouldn't have been driving, but as I was driving down this small Connecticut windy roads, I don't know if anyone's ever been in Connecticut, but that's where I grew up, I ended up falling asleep at the wheel, and I hit head-on to a tree. And I was in a little Volkswagen, and it was at that moment that something happened to me. I felt like something, I didn't know at the time that it felt like a presence came over me, and I felt this sense of absolute peace. And I heard in my head, which I thought, this is God. I feel this absolute peace. And I heard, what you're doing is not right. You need to get out of this. So I was taken to the hospital. Someone came and found me. That brought me to the hospital. I had some internal bleeding and broken nose, all these things. But once I got out of the hospital, I realized, what am I doing? I've got to get out. This is not right. This is not truth. And it was shortly after that, things started happening where I finally I left. My marriage was shot. I didn't have a marriage at that time, but I had my little girl, Sarah, and she was almost 5. And I took whatever I had in a small bag. I had only $35 to my name, and I left. And so for the next year, I left, and the woman that was running that cult she cursed me, because a lot of times you get out of cults, they say, if you leave this group, you're leaving God. That's the kind of thing they put on you. So that was going on inside of me, but I was working for a year, trying to live on my own, and I was just really having a hard time trying to reintegrate into life after being with this group for like 5 years. So it was probably a year later, I was seeing that the way my life was going, I was just making choices that were not good for me at all. It was just making my life even more miserable. So, I need some water. So, I get a phone call from a friend that was in this group in Connecticut. He had left, and he moved to somewhere else. I think he moved to Seattle. And he called me from there saying, you need to come out here. There's a small group. It's nothing like the one in Connecticut. And I think you'll really love it, and the people are sweet. There's nothing like what we had there. And I was in a place where I felt kind of like, yeah, I really don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I should go out there, and maybe it will be a good group. So I got off the phone, and what I heard in my head was, go. You're going to meet the man you're going to marry. And I didn't know where that voice came from, but I just had a sense it was something important. So I made arrangements. It was within a few months, but my daughter graduated from kindergarten, and I packed up my little car. I had a little old Saab car, and I drove across country with my daughter with what I had in my car. And I got to Seattle, and it was this little group of people. 1 week later, I meet Tom. And at that time, Tom had just got off his boat. Right, yeah. You were telling where you were.
I was on Pintado. I was getting out of the Navy within 5 months of that date, but we were changing home port to Seattle, Bremerton. My best friend in high school called my folks that we were leaving, looking for me. I hadn't seen him in the 5.5 years. I thought he was in Korea or something. He's trying to find me, and he leaves his address and phone, and my folks call me and tell me he's trying to get a hold of me. They gave me his address. He's in Seattle. So I decided to just surprise him and show up on his doorstep. And he's part of this New Age cult. So I met Greg that day. So she came from Connecticut across the country, and I came from San Diego to Seattle. It was a divine appointment. sure that we managed to mangle in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
but yeah, go ahead.
Well, so we got to talk, we met each other and talked, and we each looked at each other thinking, I thought he was like 17 years old or something. I thought he was really young. He still looks really young to me. But we went on a date, and sparks started flying, that type thing. And I started inviting him to these these meetings that we were having. And I didn't think anything of it for myself. I thought, well, maybe I'll pull him into this, And
And she was.
And I was trying to pull him in. And he would come, but every time we'd end a meeting, he would be like, I need to talk to you about Jesus. And I was like, what? Jesus? Well, Jesus was just a master teacher. That's the whole New Age kind of view of Jesus. But, he was just kind of caught up in me, I would say. And so he, we... Just a little. Yeah. So we ended up basically living together, thinking we're going to get married, and he got out of the Navy finally in January and said, I need to go home for a while to Colorado and visit my family. He said, when I come back, we'll get married. So I'm thinking, this is good. Well, he went back to Colorado, and you want to share what happened, just briefly what happened to you there?
Yeah, I drove out. The whole time there, God set me up. Talk about setups. Because I was doing my own thing. I knew Jesus, believer, just like the demons. And but he used that cult to really bring me to a place of questioning, what am I doing? Because I knew what they were saying was not truth. But I want to be with Greg. So I'm trying to make it work. And of course, really, I'm lying to myself. I know it's not going to work. And then I get discharged finally, and there's nothing holding me here. So, okay. Like she said, I told her, well, I'm going to go back and visit my family, and then I'll come back and we'll get married. That was my proposal. I'm telling her what we're going to do. I got in my truck, and this is February in Seattle. Sun hadn't seen in months, never shines that time of year. And I hit the southern city limits of Seattle and the clouds. The clouds literally peeled away. Just brilliant blue skies, bright yellow sun, just gorgeous. Mount Rainier, snow-capped, and right off in the distance. And I turned the radio on and turned it to the first station it tuned to, and it was a Christian radio station, which I had no idea that Christian radio stations existed. And it was Through the Bible with J. Vernon McGee, old Southern Baptist preacher. And he's teaching about Solomon, the apple of God's eye. But Solomon was responsible for Israel falling. Because, and this was his exact words, the neighboring kings gave him gifts, their daughters, to him, to become his wives. And they brought their idols with them. And he allowed the camp of the enemy into his household. Those was his words. And it was like a 2x4 hit me upside the head. It's like, what are you doing, Tom? Because I knew, honestly, the cult was the camp of the enemy. I knew it. But I was trying to avoid that because I wanted to be with Greg. So I got back to Colorado and wrestled with it for about a week. And finally, for the first time in my life, really surrendered and said, okay, your way, not mine. I don't know what this is going to do. I love Greg. I hope this works out some way or another. But I know that if I go back there, it's going to be disaster. I'll just create another hell. So I didn't go back. So I broke a commitment. You know, right there I broke a commitment to her that I would come back and we'd be married. But it was one I had to break to give God room in my life for his way and not mine.
And thus began letters. I have all these letters. They're kind of yellowed from age. I mean, I looked at these, I thought, oh my gosh, these look like old age letters. These are like from almost 50 years ago. Tom was sending me letters. And the first letter was just kind of a, you know, I'm back in Colorado, I'm doing this, that, and the other thing, and blah, blah, blah. And I'll be back in touch with you. All right, he's going to church with his sister, is one part of the letter too. And I'm thinking, oh, what's that about? Well, the second letter comes, and that letter, I mean, I was more like saying, you better sit down for this. And it was just scripture after scripture and salvation message. And I had never read a Bible really much. I mean, in the cult, we used the Bible a little bit, but it was so distorted. So hearing, you know, reading all these scriptures, I'm just going through page after page. I just want to see something that's more like just, you know, his words right to me. But God was using these letters that were being sent to me. Every week he was sending me letters and talking about the Lord, and I need to commit my life to the Lord, and about salvation, and we, you know, that's more important to him than anything in the world for me. And I was a little confused about it. I didn't understand. But then he started sending me some books. The first book he sent me was called Satan's Cellar by Mike Warnicki. I don't know if any of you have heard of that book. It's an older book. That kind of freaked me out. It was like the occult, you know, about Satan, and I was like, whoa, what is this? The second book he sent me was called The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. Okay, that was the book for me. When I read that book, I thought, if this is what Christianity is, I want this. So there was this hunger building in me. I look back now and I can see it, but at the time, I really didn't know what was happening to me, because I had nothing to compare it to in my life. So there's also letters in here from his mother. So his whole family was praying for me. His cousin had gotten saved, and then his cousin saved your brother and your sister, and then that went to your mom and dad. So his whole family is praying for me. And she sends me this letter, like a 5-page letter with on both sides and in the margins, and it's all this scripture and about the Lord, and it was just, I didn't really know what was happening to me. So from there, they decided, back in the church that you were going to
Faith Bible Chapel.
yes, that there was to invite, they were contacted a pastor back in Seattle to reach out to me. I mean, I've never had this happen in my life before, where people are reaching for me like this. It's just so beautiful. So anyway, I meet with the first pastor, and I'm just an arrogant little girl, arrogant little woman back then, full of pride and self-centeredness. And I meet with him. He's like a half hour late to meet me. I go into his office. He's sitting at this big old desk, and he's sitting behind the desk, and he's sort of talking maybe like a pastor talks. I don't know what it was back then, but it just turned me off. And I was just arrogant. He was talking about Jesus, and I said, well, I know who Jesus is. And I went away from there thinking, I don't know what this all is about. Well, they didn't give up. They actually contacted some other pastor. He was a younger pastor, and he called me and he asked me to go out with him for coffee. So during this time too, then I found out I was pregnant. So that was another level of things going on in my heart. I was starting to feeling more and more humbled and more needy at this time. It was just things were kind of falling apart in my life. Well, this is what happened at that meeting. So we're sitting at the table having coffee, and he's talking about the Lord, excuse me, and this is what he puts on the napkin. Has anyone ever seen this before? The napkin. And so I'm not sure what it was. I know now it was probably, at the time I didn't know what was going on, but now I know it was the Holy Spirit was really moving as he was sharing and talking to me, and he shared this picture with me. And when I saw the picture, something happened. I knew this was the truth. I saw it. I'm an artist, so I'm very visual, and when I saw that, I just started weeping, and I knew. I said, this is the truth. This is what I've been looking for. It's Jesus. This is the link to God that I'm missing. And we prayed right there in the restaurant. The sinner's prayer. I accepted Christ as my Savior. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what that even meant. But I was just open and willing and going wherever I needed to go. So that's when I really surrendered my heart and my life. And he wanted to try to find a home for me to go into because I was pregnant. And so I said, sure, whatever I need to do, I don't really know. But then that all changed because he contacted Tom, and he wasn't saying, you should do this, you should do that. He was saying, let's look into this. What do you think? What do you think Tom will think? So he was bringing us into the whole picture. And it got to the point where he said, what I think, Tom, you and Tom need to do is, he said to me, you need to go to Colorado, and you and Tom need to figure this out together. And that's what happened. So I drove to Colorado. When I got to Colorado, Tom was living with his cousin at this time in Greeley, looking for work. And when I arrived, we made a commitment to each other. We're starting over. We're new believers. We are not going to mess around. I mean, we're going to stay pure together until we're married, when and if that ever happens. That was our commitment, right? That was the commitment we made at the beginning.
Yeah, there's all kinds of nuances of what God did in that, the way he showed up in that 2 or 3 months. That was just incredible. Oh, yeah. But
start going to that church. We
ended up
found a little church
going
in Greeley.
to little, because of what God did in maneuvering me being able to find work and stuff. Yeah. I ended up in working at Kodak, and there's a lot to that.
Too much to put in today.
Crazy what God did.
Yeah, but it was God just moving.
So we go to this little Assembly God church, and everybody just accepted us. And I'd never experienced this. You know, when I became a believer, I went to an Assembly God church in Idaho, where Brianna was born. And it was so polar opposite to that experience, because in that experience, I walked into that church with Brianna's mom and walked to the second row, sat down. It was like we were ghosts. Nobody said a thing. Nobody saw us in and out of the church. And then I went to their young adults gathering that week, and it was exactly the same experience. I walked in. I'd stand up next to a couple of people talking. It's like I wasn't there. I went from group to group to group, and that's the exact same thing that happened. And that was the last I saw Christianity for 5 years, 4 years. But we go to this Assembly of God, and it's a bunch of good old boys, farmers, ranchers, loving people, just took us in. Totally different experience, just totally accepting. We met with a pastor, laid it all out, told him all of this, and told him we just want to do what the Lord wants us to do. And he says, I think you should get married. Well, the thing is, in Assembly of God churches, we didn't know this, but they don't remarry divorced people. They really stick to what they see in Scripture, what it says about divorce. And if you're divorced, the only person you can remarry is the person you divorced. But he says, I think you should get married.
Right.
Breaking their own guidelines, their own rules. We didn't know that until about 10 years ago. Found that he broke their own rules for us.
Yeah.
I wrote him, sent him pictures.
Like
just
last year?
About 5 years ago.
Oh, was it 5?
Yeah. It's
Wow.
time flies
That was
by.
last year.
Just to let him know, hey, this
We're still,
This is
we're
what-
married. Very
sending
well
pictures of
married
their
still.
entire clan now.
Yes.
Um,
Well, the other thing for me when I went to that little church, I'd never been to a church before. And I got water baptized right away. I mean, everything was happening like right away, getting saved. Got baptized. My young daughter, Sarah, was 6 at the time, she got baptized. I got filled with the Holy Spirit. It was just like this time in my life that was just sort of magical for me. Just the beginnings of my salvation. And that is what has carried me through to this day. So real to me. I just wanted to share that with you. So we were married on May 8th, 1976. And this is the picture you see. That's my daughter, Sarah, on my right, and that's Brianna on her dad's left there.
the picture of the kids there, that's just maybe 5 years, well, not even, about 4 years later.
Stephanie, yeah.
Brianna, Stephanie, Sarah, Jonah,
Yes.
another level of commitment.
Yes.
The picture in the lower left is Greg with the gal that she,
I'm not ready for that part yet, though. Okay.
yeah, we're running out of time though, honey.
Okay, let me do real quick. Well, I want to just say in the picture with Tom and I married, the commitment I made then, when I married Tom, it was almost like at the same time in my life where I felt like I was marrying Jesus in my heart. And it was just like this, the fullness of this in my marriage just really pulled me through and moved me through so many years of our life together as husband and wife, where I was learning so much. Like when I never had the Bible, so we bought these Bibles for our Bible books for our children, Seventh-day Adventists, that had all the pictures. So I would read to my children at night before bed, and then when they'd go to bed, I'd be opening the books, and I'd be reading and looking at the pictures of David and Daniel, and I'd never heard those stories. So to me, I was just hungry for God's Word and the Bible and learning. And so for me, a lot of the commitment I made that was probably one of the strongest commitments, not only to Tom, but was to Brianna. Brianna was my stepdaughter, and she's like a real daughter to me. But I knew that this was not going to be easy. Here I am, I'm pregnant, I'm just married, I have a child of my own, and I have a stepdaughter. This is like, a lot of these people don't make it. So I knew that I'm committing to Brianna. I'm going to love this little girl. She's going to become mine. And she has all these years. She's so close to me. She's like my real daughter. So that was a commitment that I made in my heart. And it was hard. There were things that were very hard about it. So that was that commitment. And also, I was committed to being a mother and a wife and my children. I poured into my children, into their lives, throughout their whole lives. And I'm looking back now because it's like they're all grown and married and have children of their own, and I have grandchildren and a great-grandchild. But that was my commitment and promise to, as I am being renewed in my life, I'm trying to pour into their lives as a new believer as well. So it wasn't always easy. There was a lot of difficulties in it, a lot of healing that I had to go through. And but God brought me through. Every day I would read a proverb a day. That was my thing, a proverb a day, because I'm going to learn how to live. I'm going to learn how to be this godly woman. Proverbs 31, and that was my life. And this was another book for me. The Hiding Place was a huge book. I'd read that book every year. And then this was another book. I don't know if anyone's heard of Edith Schaefer. It's called The Hidden Art of Homemaking. Because as an artist, I really felt like everything to me, I learned from reading her book, that everything I can see through the eyes of an artist. I can fold clothes. I can set a dinner table. I could make dinner. Everything to me became art. So it wasn't like I was this, like my mother was, stuck. I can't be this artist. No, I took it and I became where everything in my life I see as art and beauty. I can bring that into a place of beauty. So that's what really my life was about. As a mother, I did that in my life. So it didn't become a drudgery of folding and doing laundry or washing dishes. I turned that around in my life, and it became a work of art. Everything became a work of art to me. And then the picture that Tom was showing there with me, with this woman, her name is Sharon. And this was a season of life for me in Arizona. We lived in Arizona. And God brought me to a place where to deal with some of my past, which had to do with abortion. When I was a young girl, I had abortions. And I never wanted that to be known because I was ashamed as a Christian to let anybody know that about myself. But God wasn't going to let it sit there. And it was during a lot of time when the Right to Life, things were going on with movements, and someone in a church that we were in asked that they needed volunteers to help out with the Crisis Pregnancy Center. And it was during that season of my life that I committed to walk in that place of working with women, reaching for other women that were struggling, being pregnant or needing pregnancy tests. And I opened my life up, and I allowed people to see my past. And God also used that for me to be healed from that time in my life. And God used me to go into public schools, to talk to kids in high school about my story and testimony, and also to work with women that had been through abortion. I did a lot of post-abortion counseling and coaching. And it was a season of about 6 years where I became an assistant director there. And so that was a season of real healing for me, for that part of my life. And also to reach for other women, because I realized if you reach the mother, you can save the baby. You know, it's not just about the baby. Yes, the baby. But I realized, if you can reach that mother, you can reach that, you can save that baby. There was nobody there for me during those years of my life. So that's where my heart was given in commitment for those years. Oh, okay.
Let's jump over to the pictures of I'm doing some plumbing in the lumber there. I was plumbing the house. The picture to the left of that is the house that I built. Mm-hmm. That was when we lived in North Carolina. And I built that house in the midst of depression, clinically depressed. And I sabotaged myself at work. I was working in a nuclear plant in Arizona, and I made my own rules, and didn't go by their rules because I knew better. And I got caught with it, pants down. So I jumped out of the frying pan into the fire and took a job at another nuclear plant in North Carolina. And the whole thing put me into deep clinical depression because I saw my lack of integrity, and questioned my own worth and integrity. And I was in a state for a year and a half of sleeping about 2 hours a night is all I could do, and cry myself to sleep, wake up, cry myself all the way to work, somehow work a whole day, cry my way home, and start over again. And that was the state I was in when I was building that house. So the amazing thing is the way that Greg showed up.
Yes. I was used to Tom being the one that was, he was the sacrificial man in my life. He was there for me. He worked. He just laid his life down for me. He laid his life down for his family. He lived out the gospel to me. So when this happened, I was just, it felt like the rug was pulled out from under me. Like, what's going to happen now? I was feeling, okay, Lord, what's going to happen now? And he's, who is he? And I've never seen him like this, and just not able to get up to go to work, and just never seen him depressed like this. Well, this is what I heard in my heart. Because everything in me, like I tend to be a person that when I feel afraid or something, I will just want to run. I want to just, get out of here. I want to leave, I want to run. Well, everything in me was feeling, I want to just run, I want to get away from this. But what I heard in my heart from the Lord was, this is the time of your vow of the sickness and in health. And I heard that. It was so strong. And I thought, okay, this is it. And so from that time on, I would just go in at night when he was having trouble. I'd just read Psalms over him, pray over him. And I just stood for my husband during those years, for that year and a half, until he came out of it. And he did come out of it. So, yeah, that was, at this point in our life, we've been through all the vows, right? Richer for poorer.
Well, sort of rich.
Almost, yeah, sort of rich. Richer for poorer, sickness and health.
No ultra rich.
We're just waiting for the death do us part now, I guess.
Yeah.
There's more to come, but anyway. So we don't have much more time, but we want to just talk about,
I knew we
so
wouldn't
much
get
has
through
happened
all
in
of this.
49 years, really.
49 years. Yeah, that last picture, that's Greg
Yeah.
on the lower right.
Yes.
Let's see, it was 2006.
Well, the thing about Tom and I is he's an
2016.
adventurer. He wants to go skydiving. I just don't want to do that. He loves to go jump off cliffs and do things, and I'm not. I mean, I didn't even go camping as a child, or, so I was just like earthbound. So when I married him, I had to learn to do some adventure. So this one picture here is me learning. I learned how to windsurf because my husband loved windsurfing. So we would windsurf. And this last picture had to do with me doing a ropes course where I had to climb like a 30-foot pole and jump off. And there's something in me, I think, that is willing to just go for it when I'm afraid. I'm just doing it scared. That's kind of how I do things in my life. So that's those pictures there. I like a commit to something. All right, I'm going to learn this thing. I'm going to do this thing. Because this means something for us as a married couple, to have something that we do together, that we enjoy together. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah, we had a bunch more, but I kind of had a feeling that the commitment, that's why I put it first, because,
Yeah.
well, if you're around me very much, you're going to hear the word commitment.
Yes.
It's something that God has drilled into us in lots of ways. My challenge for you all is to look at your commitments, whether it's in your marriage, your friendships, your work. Because I've managed to break all those commitments in my lifetime and learn what you pay for breaking commitments. Some of you are in the mix of that, making those decisions yourself. And my encouragement to you is the price that you pay for breaking them, yeah, you can recover from it, but you're going to be scarred. You're gonna pay a price with scars the rest of your life. It's not worth it. The price you pay is too much. So keep your commitments. Really look deep into your hearts about your commitments, where you're keeping them. The thing that we learned in the like Revenant trainings that we've been part of, where that's just a whole nother level of where we learned.
Well, during our marriage, we've always, we learned that we need to prioritize our marriage. The kids are important, but our kids are gone. They've gone on to their own. And we still are together because we've prioritized our marriage. Sometimes it went a little lower, a little higher, but we always have prioritized our marriage where in the early days, we would listen to focus on the family. So we're always learning and listening for our marriage. Every time we go on a road trip together, we would listen to something on the tapes in our car. Alistair, what was his name? Alistair Begg on marriage. We listened to Marriage on the Rock. That was a big time for us by Jimmy Evans. And we started Marriage on the Rock groups when we were part of another church for a while, for a season. So that's always been, I think that's been our life mission. It has to do with our marriage and family. That it's to be strong and to be for a lifetime. And then for it to, not just to survive, but to actually thrive in marriage and affecting our children and grandchildren. So we've always been doing work on marriage. And then the Revenant training, which earlier for us was called Vision Quest, that was the next level for us, where we really broke into new depths in our heart as well. And that is what we've been committed to from that time on, right?
Yeah, it's been 20 years of involvement with Revenant trainings.
Yes.
But that leaping off her doing that ropes course was actually part of the coaching academy.
Yes.
That is the same outfit as does a Revenant. What I was going to say about that next level was the realization just in my face of how the little things, the little commitments that I make, I'm just overlooking them. And you learn it in the training, and it's like be in your seat on time. You made that commitment, well, you broke it. Why'd you break it's such an easy commitment to keep, and you broke it. Why'd you break it? It's not about shame. It has nothing to do with shame. And so it's where we go with those kind of things at first is to shame, but it's more about what level are you going to live in the realization of what's going on around you, your self-awareness.
Also, I wanted to say that I made a vow and commitment to Tom when we were at the altar, but I know now that I have to make it's like I make new commitments every single day. It's not like I'm living on that commitment from way back then, yes, but every day I have to up it again. Today is a new day. I'm recommitting today to my marriage again, every single day.
Yeah, really, we're into that phase of life where the commitment level only goes up because our bodies are failing us.
Well,
yeah. So the things that we're facing now are a whole level higher. Some of you older people know what I'm talking about. Say, okay, this is for better, for worse, rich or poor, sickness again, and health. Keep your vows. The reward in keeping your vows is worth it. The price you pay for breaking them, it's a high price. It's not worth it. And with that, I think those of you who are struggling in your commitments in marriage, hang in there. Hang in there. Fight, flight, or freeze, the thing that makes you want to run, man, hang in there. Because there is a way if you'll just be still. Because he is God. He will show up. He'll see you through it. Long suffering, all the fruit of the Spirit you learn in hanging in there. So come get prayer. And yeah, that's it. That's what I got to say.
It's good.
Please hang in there.